What's going on, everybody? We are back, episode number 13 on the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, it's just going to be three of us. It's got myself, John Stargarian, MMA. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. Quinn was unable to make it tonight because of some personal stuff, and C is a little burnt out and taking the week off. So the three of us are going to run with this. It's going to be fun. I guess first of all, before anything, just wanted to, in case you guys see, I got a Square hat here. Got this courtesy of Squares and Sharps. Pretty cool company. Give out a bunch of swag that's betting related. They give a portion of their profits to charities. And so, yeah, I'll be wearing the Square hat for the rest of the year. Hopefully it'll remain an ironic token. But
yeah, and if real quick too, cheap plug, if you guys want to sport some merch, use my promo code SWR2020, 15% off, free shipping.
Yeah, there you go. They have a lot, so it's pretty cool company. Strongly suggest if you're into clothing, like most people are, you go wear it. So anyway, we'll jump into breakdowns from last week real quick. Had a big week for the podcast in general, both for Quinn and C as well. I don't know what exactly they went up, but I know they were both in the green. So were the three of us. So I guess I'll go through my plays first. The first play of the night, I had 3 units, Movsar Evloev. Fight pretty much went exactly, well, not exactly as I thought. I actually thought Grundy's wrestling looked better than I kind of gave him credit for. He got Evloev down 5 times. But ultimately, I didn't think he could keep pace, and it turns out he couldn't. He couldn't hold Evloev down, and Evloev kind of just went through him, and as the rounds went on, just kept turning it up. And, guys that have Grundy's build and are that muscle strapped tend to not have very good gas tanks, and he just slowed down. But, yeah, so I felt like my read was pretty on point there, and, Grundy actually impressed me. So I actually think I underestimated him a bit, but I think the line was a good one. Next up, I had Jesse Ronson for a unit plus 245. I said it on the pod last week. I thought the striking was pretty much even here. Some concerns about size, but unless Dalby was going to turn into a wrestler, this should be a competitive fight. And Ronson put him out. So that was a real nice hit. And then I had Francisco Trinaldo against Jai Herbert. And this one I'm less sure about, whether or not I had value here. Trinaldo certainly looked like the value side in the first round, but he got his ass beat in round 2, and he looked old for really the first time in this fight, and he looked pretty shot in round 3 before the KO. But he got it, and, even if Herbert was the better value, I'll take the W here. And then next up, I had Carla Esparza, 2 units on her, plus 135. Got a shit line. It's funny. I talked to you guys about it after the fight. I did tape on this thinking, this line's going to even or maybe Carla a slight favorite when everybody else looks at it. And it went the other way on me. But yeah, it went, I shouldn't say, I thought it was a near even fight, but it went close to how I thought it would go. Generally when you take, a WMMA, if one girl's a good wrestler and the other isn't, she's usually going to end up on her back for a fair amount of time. And, I agree with a lot of the takes that Carla's game isn't impressive. But again, you don't need elite athleticism if you're a strong wrestler in women's MMA, except at the absolute highest levels. And, Marina, she defended takedowns at 70% to that time, but she'd given up 5 of 9 to Marcos and Calvillo, which seemed like pretty big red flags. So, yeah, it was a close decision. I thought it was the right one, but very close, but I think there was value there. And then last up, I had Whitaker. I had 2.5 units, minus 120. And this is another one, I'm not really sure I had value here. I expected it to be a lot more clear cut. And, Whitaker out-volumed him like I expected he would, and that's what won him the fight. But Till was really competitive, and Whitaker I thought it was one of the best versions of Till I've seen, and it was one of the worst versions of Whitaker I've seen. And it's like if Till could just throw more. That's all he has to do. Just throw more strikes. His ceiling is very high. But again, that's why he lost. But I think the line pretty much seemed on point. But yeah, so that was it for me. 5 for 5. I went up 10.15 units. Luke, how'd you do last week?
Yeah, so pretty decent night. It could have been a lot better night, but we'll get into it. I had 2 units on Evloev at minus 185. You kind of touched on it. I was a bit surprised too. I think the strength of Grundy actually did play a factor. That was kind of one of my question marks coming in. And we saw that at least early on in the fight, but that I think Evloev's wrestling and scrambling ability was pretty underrated, even pre-fight. Some of the times that he guys got him down on the regional scene, no one was really ever able to hold him down. I just think the guy is a little bit underrated, at least in terms of his wrestling and his striking too. I thought his striking looked good, where Grundy was just kind of one and done there. So the volume definitely got it done for Evloev there. So I was happy about that. I played Aspinall Collier under 2.5 rounds at -155. I'm so mad I did not put like 4 units on that. And I know that sounds stupid, like hindsight or whatever, but like I even said pre-fight in my breakdown, I was like, I would be shocked if this goes 15 minutes. And it's like, so just little adjustments there. It should have been a stronger than a 2-unit play, especially with how Collier showed up looking like the Michelin man. So kind of bummed about that one, but it cashed. So I ended up making a last-minute play on Trinaldo when he got to dog odds at +102. We talk about the value side and whatnot, but I mean, still, Trinaldo came on strong. I think, he did what he needed to do. Obviously, later in that fight, it got a little bit hairy, but I was happy to get him at dog odds there. I think there was. Yeah, I think there was value on that. This is one though I am happy I only played for 1 unit due to how close it was in the whole shot factor. That's why I played it small. So I was happy about that. And then my only loss on the night was the over in the Trinaldo fight, which missed by about a minute, which really sucked.
Tried to get you there.
Yeah, but no, in full transparency, I'm not going to be a crybaby about that because in terms of my analysis and why I played the over was absolutely wrong. I said that was going to be a slow-paced fight, and it was the complete opposite, and it was an absolute war. The guys going back and forth. So analysis was wrong. So I'm cool with losing that, but it still hurts to lose a total like that by such a small margin. And then I also had Esparza as well. This is when I'm mad. I didn't play heavier. I only played her for 1 unit at +165. I thought my read was good on it, and I should have had my unit sizing adjust more to my read. So I think going forward, I'm going to start playing a little bit more heavier. In the past years, I used to play a lot more 3-4 unit plays. This year, I think I got a little discouraged because of some of the judging really early on in the year. So I dropped my unit sizing down a little bit, but now this year's kind of starting to tick back up for me. And I think my reads have been largely pretty good. So I think I might start going a little bit heavier, but yeah, so I ended the night +3 units. If that overhit, it would have been close to 6, which is kind of a bummer. But nonetheless, I'll take the profit.
Lex, how did you do?
Pretty good. So I actually finished at 2-2 plus 0.95 units. So I guess starting off first, I had a 2-unit parlay with Chimaev and Bozer. Not really much else to say, I guess, with Bozer. I thought he was going to use, like I said, his the quickness and agility to just point, move in and out against Pessoa. And honestly, I didn't expect a knockout. But, I mean, I guess I'll take it what it is.
What a stunt job by Pessoa that was, by the way. Like, what the fuck? What was that? You just wanted out of there.
Yeah, I guess I heard the interview afterwards that a knuckle went into his eye. So, that's pretty bizarre.
I mean, that happened to other people in the cage.
Yeah, so so we'll move on. I guess I had Chimaev -490 in the parlay. Not much else to say on that. I got the early line on FanDuel. So I had 1 unit Oliveira Sabata under 2.5 at +100. I thought Sabata was going to give a better account of himself, to be honest. And I thought that if the fight stayed standing longer, I thought Oliveira was going to have more success and be able to finish him. And I just don't think he wanted to engage as much as I thought he would have. So I guess that would probably be my only regret of the night. And then I had 1 unit. So Whitaker ends in knockout -105. They hurt each other early in the fight, but I don't know. I just didn't think Till engaged enough, like you talked on. I mean, if Till threw a little bit more volume, I think we could have maybe seen an early finish, but it is what it is. I was happy with the line that I got it at, and I thought that over the 5 rounds, I honestly did not see that go into the decision. So
yeah, it was a weird weekend. Sorry.
And then 1 unit on Shogun at -185. Full transparency, I I knew that fight was going to be close, but I thought that 5 years ago he took Little Nog's best punches in that first round. So 5 years after the fact, I thought he was just going to be able to do it again. And we saw him hurt early first round, and he was able to weather the storm and pull a decision. I know a little bit controversial, but I think he was.
I think honest.
Yeah,
Shogun won.
Scored for him as well. Yeah,
honestly, I think some people were saying that just because they wanted to see like 44-year-old Little Nog get a dub, but like it seemed like very, very straightforward to me, to be honest.
Yeah, so not bad. Squeak profit on the night, but definitely need to be a little bit sharper.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a good week for the podcast. Actually, 2 good weeks in a row for the podcast here. And so we move into this week. It's an interesting card.
It's a shit card, to say the least, I
guess. We only have 11 fights on it. There are bets though. I have some bets here. And so yeah, let's jump right in. First up we got Chris Gutierrez, Cody Durden. Luke, I believe you originally had a 4-year play on Gutierrez before Luke Sanders got pulled out. But yeah, so this is actually a pretty interesting fight. Current odds on it are, let's see. We got Gutierrez minus 350, come back on Durden's plus 290. And like, I taped it, and it's like, I have this feeling that Durden's going to be the value side and that has a really good chance to win the fight. The problem is, like, so he's basically, very heavy wrestler, throws decent ground and pound, decent submission game. The problem is he's fought nobody regionally, and so it's like you watch the takedowns he's landing. These guys that he's fighting have no idea how to defend him. They have no idea how to defend passes. And so, like, while some of it looks good, I just can't really trust that it is that good until I see him face somebody who at least has even a novice understanding of how to defend, professional level takedowns. And so it's like, I kind of look at this and say, if he can't get them against Gutierrez, he's going to get absolutely lit up. And it kind of seems almost binary to me. Like, this is going to look like, and you're going to know pretty fast, either like an even money fight or Gutierrez is going to look like minus 600. And I have really no idea which way to go. I'm just thinking in my head, like, this might be a good live spot. Like, if their books are offering it on the first fight, like if Durden gets in on his hips quick, maybe just stab Durden right away. But yeah, I have to pass on this. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of in the similar mindset too, that this could be an interesting live betting spot. This Durden guy, you pretty much touched on it, John, where, he's kind of just running through all these guys on the regional scene who don't really have any concept of takedown defense or any idea of really what to do off their back. So it's one of those things where you kind of just have to take his performances with a grain of salt, at least from a handicapping perspective, until we see more from him, as you touched on. But I do think, at least from what I've seen, I think he does have a style that could pose Chris Gutierrez problems. My big question here, though, is he able to sustain that over the course of 15 minutes? Right. I think it's just one of those situations where I think he'll kind of come out and look pretty decent early. But I think he might slow down once Chris starts stuffing some of those takedowns, gets off on some of those kicks, starts limiting his mobility a little bit. And then I kind of just think Chris takes over the fight. So I definitely don't think you should be laying over 3-1 on Gutierrez in the spot. But I think if you're also betting Durden, I think it's a little bit of a dart throw. But I think from a live, I think this fight's good though from a live betting perspective. But even if he does look good in the first round, I would still be a little bit careful because, Gutierrez, he's battle tested. He's a vet. He's fought a lot of really tough guys. So yeah, I'm going Gutierrez, as you touched on too. I had 4 units on him over Luke Sanders. Just that made one of 15 fights bets that's fallen out for me this year. So story of the year for me. Pretty bummed I lost that one, but I think Gutierrez should roll here.
Lex, how about you?
I'll be honest, I'm not really didn't really look much into this fight, and I similar to Luke, I was looking to play Gutierrez over Sanders, but there's no way I'm going to touch him at minus 350 here. And I think that there's a lot of recency bias from the last fight, but yeah, I think he should be an overwhelming favorite here, but I don't know if minus 350 is exactly warranted here. So it's a pass.
Yeah, fair. So we move on to the second fight of the evening. We got Jamal Emmers taking on newcomer Timur Valiev. Emmers is actually currently sitting as a dog, plus 145. Valiev's a favorite, minus 165. And I actually got in on Emmers here a couple days ago. Got 2 units in at plus 170. Pretty much, like, I watched tape on it, and like I get why people like Valiev. Like, he's obviously, he trains in that Edgar's a beat camp, and he fights a lot like Edgar. He's got the very frenetic style, throws decent volume, will wrestle and grind opponents when the opportunities are there. But like, I watched it, and I got to be honest, like, I didn't come away thinking, this guy is like, a future, top 10 guy. I think he's going to win fights in the UFC. And you look at Emmers, and like, I think people are down on Emmers because he's lost. He's fought a good amount of a good competition regionally, but he's always seemed to lose when he's taken that step up. The thing is, though, Emmers has a massive size advantage here. So Valiev's basically a 135 pounder who's fighting up at 145 right now. He's given away 4 inches in height, 6 inches in reach. In terms of the striking, like, he might be a better technical striker than Emmers is, but it's not easy to get inside that reach. And frankly, I kind of, I think Emmers is a bit of an underrated striker, to be honest. Like, not that he's like a lead or anything like that, but his punches are good and straight. He keeps a pretty high pace. His kicks are pretty heavy. I really think, I wish he'd use his jab more because he has a decent jab. He just doesn't use it. But like, I think he can kind of stay even or ahead of Valiev in strikes, and Emmers tends to throw mostly head strikes where Valiev generally throws, kicks and body work. And so it's like that generally scores better with judges. And I just don't give Valiev much of a chance to really out-grapple Emmers here. Like, he might get takedowns, but I don't think he can hold them there. And frankly, I actually think the grappling upside of Emmers is a bit higher. So yeah, I just think the size is a huge thing here. And I think Emmers can pretty much compete everywhere. So like, I see it almost as an even money fight. So yeah, I'm on Emmers for 2 units plus 170. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so not to play complete contrarian, because I was actually looking to potentially play Emmers as well. I saw that plus 170 number, and I was close to hitting it, but with how I capped the fight, I really wanted 10% on this kind of a fight, and it just wasn't there. So it's kind of one I'm okay passing on. I guess my big thing though is I'm not high on Jamal Emmers, but I'm also not as low on him as a lot of people are either. I think you brought up a lot of good points, John. I think his striking is underrated. The dude's extremely athletic, former wrestler as well. He doesn't use it too much offensively, but he uses it primarily defensively. No one's really taken him down and just like ridden him out or done anything like that. So really what this fight comes down to for me is how Valiev gets inside and how consistently he does it, and can he do it over the course of 15 minutes? Because I think those leg kicks are really good. I like his lateral movement and his footwork on the outside. But yeah, obviously, given the size advantage, and in my opinion, as I touched on, Emmers' underrated striking, I don't think he can sit here at range for 15 minutes with Jamal Emmers, because I think Emmers then pretty much pieces him apart. But so I think Valiev is going to be able to get on the inside and have some success. But we've also never really seen anybody try to go wrestle heavy on Jamal Emmers, which is a really big question mark to me in this fight. And I would assume that Valiev is going to at least mix in his wrestling a decent amount, not necessarily saying he's going to be diving on legs for 15 minutes. But so I'm really curious to see how Emmers deals with that as well, even with that collegiate background. I mean, this Valiev guy, he's a Dagestani-based guy, pretty solid wrestler to boot. He took down a couple other Dagestani guys in PFL too. So I do like this guy, but that size differential is a bit of a question mark to me. And like I said, is he going to be able to get on the inside? How much does he wrestle? To me, there's just a few too many question marks on this fight. So I'm picking Valiev, but I think it's definitely a dog or pass situation. And I think you got a pretty decent number, John.
Lex, how about you?
Yeah, I'm not going to add much else, but I would agree that it's also dog or pass in the situation. My golden rule for the most part is not touching debutant fighters, especially around minus 180, minus 200. I've been burned in the past, so it's just a pass for me. I usually just look at these new, like these debuting fighters. If there's a strong edge to one side, like we talked about before with Maria Agapova, but in this fight, I have no interest, to be honest, so it's a pass.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable. And so we move on. weird little fight. Suspicion this could be entertaining, oddly enough. But we have Eric Spicely taking on Marcus Maluka Perez in the middleweight division. And Luke, I'll go to you first. What do you got here?
So I think this is actually a sneaky fight of the night candidate right here. I think this should be a fun little scrap. It might be a little sloppy at times. I'm not saying it's going to be on any highlight reels anytime soon, but no, I think in terms of this line and Perez being minus 200, I guess I'll preface by saying, based on how Maluka fights, he's definitely not a guy I want to back at this chalky of a price. But I think if you get him at a sneaky dog, like plus 150, plus 200 number, given the right matchup, those are the kind of fights I'd be looking to target him in. But, he kind of fights out of that karate stance. He kind of bounces in and out. He's a BJJ brown belt. But the interesting thing about it is, usually these guys who kind of fight out of that karate-based stance bounce in and out. Usually they're a lot more evasive, and their striking defense is a lot better. But it's not for Maluka. I think he defends strikes at like 52%. He gets hit a lot. Guys are able to kind of get in and clinch on him a lot too. So he's just kind of one of those really weird, funky fighters, but he's definitely not a guy that you can disrespect at all either, because he is crafty and he kind of does have that sneaky power. But, he's fighting a guy in Eric Spicely who it's his second UFC run now. And I think at 33 years old, we've kind of seen pretty much all we can see from Eric Spicely. I don't think you're going to see any massive improvements from him. He's a BJJ black belt. He's going to be a guy who's going to kind of brawl because he's not really afraid to be taken down. And with that, guys are also really not trying to take him down given his jiu-jitsu prowess. So he's actually been competitive on the feet in a couple of these fights. And I think he's got some power. He's kind of like a Sergio Moraes in a way, a guy who's confident in his jiu-jitsu. So he's just going to let it fly and see what happens. Because of that, he's also found himself knocked out and also submitted by other better grapplers as well. But the issue with Spicely is, though, he almost absorbs 6 strikes, significant strikes per minute too. So my big thing in this fight is I think if Perez can actually keep that distance and fight from the outside and kind of point fight Spicely, I think he should actually cruise pretty easily here. But if Spicely kind of makes this a dog fight, I think this fight could play a lot closer than odds indicate. But just given Spicely's kind of like prodding forward type style, he's not very fast. I think this is actually one of those spots where that movement pattern of Maluka will actually shine due to Spicely not being very quick. So then again, I wouldn't recommend laying minus 200 in the spot. And then Spicely, that's a real dart throw if you're going the Spicely side. This is actually one of the fights in my 3 not for me this week. So I'm picking Maluka, but it's pass for me.
Lags, what do you got?
I guess, there's not much else to add. I'm not really high on Perez at all. Thank you, Kyle. Love the sport. So, I like Luke said, there's no way I'd be laying minus 200 at Perez here. I think he's decent on the feet. He's got flashy kicks. He can keep the distance decently. But as we've seen in his 3 decision losses, it's the guys who try to push him up against the cage, rough him up, make it a dogfight, and take him down. So I don't know if Spicely's going to be able to do that. Just like you touched on, he's slow, plodding, and I think he leaves himself way too open and to the body. So I think this is a prime for Perez body kick knockout. So I really don't want to be laying minus 200 though on Perez, and Spicely is not piquing my interest at all as a dog. So it's a pass. But I was looking at the over 1.5, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can trust Spicely's durability.
What's the juice on that?
Minus 140.
It's not horrible.
So it's not horrible. But we're back in the apex, so
yeah,
it's going to be a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I hear that, Lags. It's funny. I think I messaged you guys about a month ago, and I was like, how the fuck is Maluka Perez only minus 200 against Eric Spicely?
You did. Yeah, I remember that.
And then I watched tape on Maluka Perez, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's why. Perez is like, he's one of those guys who's just like, he does some things, and I'm like, wow, he's like pretty athletic. Like, he should be good, except he just doesn't do enough. Like, he doesn't have a very good gas tank. He's extraordinarily hittable. It's like you said, Luke, he has that weird karate stance, which opens him up, but he's not evasive at all. Like, he's pretty much there to tag. But he's got a decent submission game. He seems decently dynamic. I think he finished Ian Heinisch, I believe, in LFA. But yeah, like, he's just not trustworthy because it's one of those guys, like, if he doesn't put you out or like really hurt you in a round, you're probably going 50-50 on that round. So I was like, maybe I'll play Eric Spicely here. He landed 100 strikes against Darren Wynn. And then you watch tape on him, and it's like, I do think Spicely can compete for rounds with him. And like you said, Lags, maybe even push him up the cage, make it dirty, take rounds that way. Except he's so, like you said, so vulnerable to body, so hittable. Darren Wynn landed 170 significant strikes against him. Like, Darren Wynn's 5'6" at middleweight. Like, this guy. And, like, I remember seeing that fight when I came to tape. I was like, well, maybe Spicely, his durability is improved. And it's like, well, Darren Wynn hasn't knocked anybody out. And you watch the tape, and Spicely just doesn't have it. So I don't know. Like, I kind of think the line's wide, but I wouldn't feel comfortable playing either side of it. So, yeah, it's just a total pass for me. But yeah, so next up we go to a fun fight, couple bets here. We got Ray Borg, Nate Maness. Luke, you want to take this first?
Yep. So I moved in on a play, I think yesterday or the day before. I put 3 units on Ray Borg at minus 190, kind of right before the line spiked. I guess my biggest rationale here is with this Maness guy, once again, given the whole COVID situation, it's another short notice guy coming in. And I just think that getting a guy like Borg on short notice is just an absolute nightmare, especially, like I said, given the climate and the type of pace that Ray Borg can push. I know that this Maness guy is going to have like a massive size advantage here. So the strength consideration is definitely a consideration and a concern to some extent. But in, doing tape on this Maness guy, like, he's looked decent in his tape. Like, he's definitely got the better of the exchanges, essentially, with virtually everyone he's fought. But I noticed that pretty much any time someone has went forward and pressured him, he's getting hit all the time. And so I don't claim that Ray Borg, is this excellent striker, and he's obviously at a massive reach disadvantage here. But one thing I think we can all say for sure is that, in Ray Borg fights, he's going to go forward and he's going to push a high pace for all 15 minutes. So even if he's not able to land takedowns here, because this Maness guy has showed pretty decent takedown defense, we've also seen Borg just kind of be a wet blanket, like a mat return type of guy. Even if he's not able to get it, he'll kind of transition to your back and then kind of ride you down, hold you there on one knee, soften you up with some punches. Finally, once you stand up, he'll put you back down again. Even if he's not able to control you and put your back to the mat, he's just going to be on you, grind for 15 minutes. So I just don't think this Maness guy is going to have it on a week's notice to fight at that kind of pace. Like, I mean, the guy does hit a little bit hard, but to me, he's kind of just like it's a KO or bust type of situation. And one thing I noticed real quick too is that, he stands very heavy on his lead leg. His footwork isn't very good. His lateral movement isn't very good. So takedown defense originally aside, those usually aren't very good things to have originally when you're going to have somebody actively trying to take you down. He just seems relatively stationary. So like I said, I think it's just kind of KO or bust. And I think Borg can just pretty much grind him out for 15 minutes, if not jump on his back at some point and grab a submission. So like I said, maybe the strength is the strength and size just plays such a big factor here. And this bet just completely foils due to that. But against a guy in Borg who's just been battle tested, fought the much better guys, he can go for all 15. Minus 190, I think that's a lot of value.
Lex, how about you?
Yeah, I'm actually, I guess, probably one of the only guys on the podcast I think that isn't playing Ray Borg. Just because I like the matchup stylistically for him, and I think it's definitely one of his easier matchups in his last 5 fights. But I'm not looking to lay this kind of chalk where the line's currently set at minus 230, minus 240 on Ray Borg, especially at 135 pounds. So, I mean, like we touched on, I guess, it's a weak notice or like short notice fight for this guy. So Ray Borg's kind of got that style that, I mean, you can't fight like that in such a short notice. You're, like he said, KO or bust, I would say. But I'm not looking to bet Ray Borg here. I'll be honest, but I think he wins the unanimous decision.
I hear that. Yeah, so I actually played Borg. I got in a little later than Luke. I got 2.5 units at minus 220. Pretty much. I mean, if you're going to take what beats Ray Borg, well, you can either be a strong defensive grappler who throws any kind of decent volume, or you can wrestle him to death. I guess Maness in theory can land takedowns here, but I've looked at some of his wrestling and it's not impressive. And he doesn't really throw volume. In terms of a good defensive wrestler, this was a bit frustrating to tape because he had fights with Taylor Lapalus and Jesse Arnett, both of whom are pretty good wrestlers, and Arnett didn't attempt a takedown and got knocked out in the second round. Bizarre. Lapalus didn't attempt a takedown and finished him on the feet. Also, like, a little bizarre. So didn't see it there. Shout out to Mike's MMA Picks for sending us this, but Mike gave me a heads up on a regional fight he had a long time ago against Isaiah Ferguson. And, he basically ended up on his back, no idea what to do, gave up his back right away. And the only other real instance I found of him grappling, I believe, was against Cal Machado. And the fight hit the mat once. He popped up right away, but again, gave his back immediately to get up. And, Borg's got a great back take. And the other thing is, Luke, you touched on this a bit, the footwork is just really bad. Like, he doesn't really look to circle out at all, which pretty much need to against Borg, because Ray Borg's not going to just sit there at range. He's going to bomb right to the fence. And so he's going to get pushed to the fence here pretty much right away, I guess. I don't think he's got the jab to keep him off him. And on the fence, he doesn't really seem to build a wide base. So my suspicion, similar to yours, Luke, is he's not going to be able to defend takedowns here. And even in the event he can give more resistance than I'm expecting him to do, I sort of just think Borg's going to be able to just kind of physically control him on the fence for most of this fight. And even at range, I'd favor Maness at range just because Borg just doesn't throw strikes. But I do think Borg is the much cleaner and more technical striker of the two. And so, yeah, I pretty much think for Maness to win this fight, he either needs to knock him out or show some kind of a massive evolution that we haven't seen in his game on tape. Not impossible, but when you hear the stuff that, he was literally about to retire and hasn't been training full time, he's been working, it's not good, and I find it hard to believe that we're going to see some huge evolution on short notice. So, yeah, I kept Borg around minus 300. Could be wrong. It's a huge size disadvantage, but, it's a shot I'm willing to take here. So we move on, and we got another fun one here. Luke, did you end up playing this, Herman Meerschaert?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right, so we'll start with Lags.
I think this Luque is going to be a contender for fight of the night.
All right, Lags, hit me with it. Hit me with the breakdown.
There's no way I'm laying juice on GM3. That's the break. That's the breakdown. I mean, we basically just saw him get knocked out, albeit not a devastating knockout to Ian Heinisch not too long ago. So I think this is a very fast turnaround against a very game opponent in Ed Herman. And he still got the power at this old age. So I mean, I'm not going to say this is a dog or pass, but I'm definitely not looking to lay the wood on GM3 here. So pass for me.
Yeah, so GM3 has been pretty much a bonfire of my money to date in the UFC. It's been real fucking fun betting his fights. But I kind of like Herman here. Like it's.
Yeah, I don't see the weigh-ins first, to be honest. I guess that's just my preference.
I haven't bet it yet. I don't know if I will. But so you look at GM3 and I do expect he can get Herman now. I've seen the stats. He doesn't, and I've seen the tape. He doesn't defend tape that takes downs well. But if you actually look at GM3 on top, he's almost like a more seasoned Brendan Allen in that he does a spectacular job finding dominant positions and almost an equally spectacular job of losing those dominant positions. Like Gerald Meerschaert, it seems like will mount his opponent 3 to 4 times a fight and get mounted 3 to 4 times in the same fight, often in that same round. And so, that's a concern, especially because Herman's not, Herman's biggest issue on the mat isn't that he's incompetent there. It's that he tends to play guard. But Herman's a black belt himself, and I actually do think if this heads to the mat, has a chance to make this a typical GM3 scrambly mess. And, if that happens, well, then all bets are kind of off. And minus 175 for GM3, I don't know. On the feet, I think Meerschaert's striking is kind of ass. He looked good against Wynn, but Darren Wynn's a midget. It's not really that hard to look good at Darren Wynn. You just need to keep your distance. So so true. And it's on the feet, I do think think Herman is the cleaner striker. I think he can hurt him. I think the fact that GM3 literally got knocked unconscious a month ago is probably a pretty concerning sign. And now he's moving up to light heavyweight. So I don't know. I definitely am not playing GM3. I'm kind of hoping, like, I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter talk about Meerschaert here. I'm kind of hoping this like bumps up to Herman like plus 170, plus 180. I'd be happy to stab him there. But yeah, I think Herman's the value here. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I haven't pulled the trigger on Ed Herman yet. I will be betting Ed Herman. I guarantee that. It's just I'm being greedy here because I do think that more GM3 money will be coming in. But yeah, you made a really good point. Like after that Duran Win fight, I saw so much narrative on Twitter that this guy's like some phenomenal boxer now or whatever. It's like, okay, well, it's not that hard to jab a 5'6" guy into oblivion the whole time. So I listen, I don't want to talk shit on GM3 because he's from Wisconsin, you know.
He's fun. He's fun.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. He's fun. He's fun to watch. But yeah. Like my big thing is like this is a betting podcast, and you know it's all about matchups. And I just think Ed Herman is a terrible matchup for Gerald Meerschaert, and I say that because even if Gerald is able to get takedowns, I guess that's my one concern is that if he's able to just ride out top time, but then to your point, John, like you said, he's so aggressive in attacking submissions, he often loses position. And as you touched on again, and Herman's a black belt too, so he's defensively responsible. Like, listen to this. The last two guys that submitted Ed Herman, Jacare Souza and Damian Maia. Yeah. Those are the last two guys to submit Ed Herman. So granted, GM3's got a crafty sub game, but I don't think he's going to sit there and just grab a hold of something like he's been able to do to some other guys on a guy like Ed Herman. But really where this fight comes down to me is I actually think Ed Herman does stuff takedowns here. And I think this fight actually largely plays out on the feet. And so from a striking perspective, we've seen Gerald be very, very hittable. I don't want to sit there and play the recency bias game because he got knocked out necessarily a month ago, but he's been hurt in a lot of his other fights too. Despite not being knocked out, you know, Ed Herman's got some really heavy hands, man. Like, I think there's just a little bias because, you know, he's 39. He's kind of a prodding guy. He doesn't have a flashy style per se. He's kind of been a win one, loss one kind of guy. But once again, this is all about styles. And I think that left hook of Herman's going to be there all day on GM3. I think that overhand right for Herman is going to be there all day. So yeah, I mean, like assuming Ed Herman isn't completely shot, I guess, but there's nothing that indicates that he necessarily is. He just won his last two fights, strung together 2 wins for the first time in like the last, I think 3 or 4 years or something like that. So like I said, I just think it's a bad matchup for GM3. I think he's, I guess, sub or bust or maybe like greasy, close split decision. So I mean, give me like plus 150 or above on Herman all day. Like I said, I haven't played it yet because I'm just being greedy, but I will be playing this fight for sure. Yeah, I don't understand the line at all. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah, I guess it's similar to how. I'm sorry, real quick. I guess it's similar to like how with the Perez fight too. It's like he has the opportunistic subs, and then if it doesn't happen, then okay, what happens? He loses a grindy decision.
Right, and he could theoretically win that grindy fight too.
Right, he could.
That's the, like
value
struggle to win that at least. Yeah, exactly. Value.
We'll touch on that later.
Yeah. We could jump into that. Mr. Houston MMA coming at everybody. Anyway, we move on. We're gonna stick with Luke here. We got Frankie Saenz, Jonathan Martinez. What do you got, Luke?
All right, boys. I'm fired up for this one. I like this one. So I think I'm probably the only one I've seen on MMA Twitter who's on Frankie Saenz. I played him for 1.5 units at plus 188. Messed this one up. Got in a little too early, obviously, now that Frankie's sitting, I think, like plus 215 or so. But really, my rationale behind this is I just don't think Jonathan Martinez is very good. I don't think he overtly excels in any area. I don't think his jiu-jitsu is very strong. I don't think his wrestling is very good. I think his stand-up is serviceable, but nothing crazy. And, you know, I think the large narrative on why this line is the way it is because Frankie Saenz is 39 and has taken a ton of damage. But once again, you're kind of just playing like the shot or not narrative. And that's just a narrative that I don't want to play. And to be honest, despite Frankie going 2-4 in his last 6, he's been competitive in a lot of those fights against really, really tough guys. And I guess the crux of why I'm really betting him here is a lot of people forget that Frankie Saenz is a former Division I wrestler at Arizona State. And Jonathan Martinez does not defend takedowns well at all. Andre Sukumtat took him down 3 times. Who's Andre Sukumtat out wrestling? And then he got, I think it was Luigi Burin took him down. But then again, he was able to like reverse a couple positions on him. But I think Luigi's wrestling's personally overrated. Ultimately, my point is this is by far the best wrestler that he's fought by miles. So assuming he's not completely shot, I think Saenz can mix it up on the feet. We've seen him hurt multiple guys. You know, he's a little brawly, a little wild, sure. But Jonathan Martinez is a guy who really needs space to succeed. And Frankie Saenz is just a guy who's not going to give that to him, whether that's via striking or wrestling. I think he's going to be in his face for 15 minutes. So assuming he doesn't get clipped with something, I think Frankie Saenz really gives him a vet lesson here. So +1, this is another one of these lines, man, where I think it's just really crazy off. And I know one narrative I've kind of seen too is like, oh, well, how can you expect Frankie to wrestle? He hasn't really wrestled all that much recently. It's like, well, you got to look at who he's fighting, bro. He's fighting Uriah Faber, Merab, Tanquinho Mendez, who's like a world-class BJJ guy. And there's a couple of Eddie Wineland, who I think is 3rd all-time in takedown defense in the bantamweight division. Like, he's not fighting.
And then Cheeto Vera next.
And then he got sparked by Cheeto in like a minute and a half, which Cheeto right now is looking the best he's ever had in his whole career. So, I mean, the guy's been fighting legit guys. In my opinion, Martinez is 2-2 in the UFC, and really has not put together a complete performance in any of those 4 fights. Hasn't looked overtly well. And to be honest, I was fine. I don't think the Andre Ewell fight was a robbery at all. I had it 29-28 for Ewell too.
He got outlanded by one-handed Andre Ewell the last round of the fight. Like, he had literally had one hand.
Andre Ewell essentially outstruck him with a broken arm for 15 minutes. So this narrative that Jonathan Martinez is like this great striker, I would highly beg to differ there, getting beat by a guy with one arm. So to me, this is all Frankie Saenz. Once again, maybe he comes in here and gets sparked by Martinez, but outside of that Lou fight where he landed that knee towards the end of the fight, Jonathan Martinez hasn't knocked anybody out since 2015. So to me, it's literally, if you're playing Martinez, you're just assuming that Frankie's shot, because I don't know what tape other people are watching, because Frankie is an absolutely terrible matchup for Jonathan Martinez. So this is one of those spots, man, where it's a fight and a bet that I'm completely willing to lose, assuming Frankie's chin's just completely gone. But I have to play the tape. I have to play who's fought the better guys. I have to play who's the better style matchup here, and that's Frankie Saenz.
I actually think, I'm pretty sure Frankie landed 4 takedowns against Henry Briones as well. It was the last kind of non-wrestler he fought. So it's not like it's dried up completely.
Dominated him too.
Yeah. Hey, relax. What do you got for me here?
So I guess the civil breakdown here would be that in the last 5 fights, like on this card that I see, all the big favorites, the -200s, they're your apple pie shitters. They're the guys that shouldn't be these kind of big favorites, and it's kind of like a big narrative based on why they are the big favorites. So you look at Marcus Perez against Spicely. Okay, so we're questioning Spicely's durability and his ability to close the distance, because if he stays at range, he's going to get lit up on the feet. Then you have GM3 and Ed Herman. We're questioning Ed Herman's durability and his ability to defend the takedown. So then you come to this fight, and then I mean, maybe Frankie shot. I guess that would probably be the only narrative, I guess, to say that Jonathan Martinez is a -250 favorite. But, I mean, this is definitely, for me, the definition of a dog or pass. I don't know. I'm not really high on Jonathan Martinez. And I think Frankie, like Luke said, I think he could definitely give him the vet lesson with this type of matchup.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go too much more into it because, Luke, you kind of knocked it out of the park. The only thing I will is that, so like you guys know, I'm pretty number dependent a lot of times. And, I kind of broke down the numbers here, and pretty much throughout his career, Martinez gets outpaced by his opponents, like pretty significantly. Only 4-fight sample, but like, again, like to your point, Luke, I've seen like so many people talk about, how clean his striking is. And it's like, well, he doesn't really throw that much. When he gets hit, he has a bad, he looks like the classic guy who doesn't like getting hit. Like he's a bad tendency to shell up when he gets hit. Buren is okay at getting takedowns. Sukumatath is maybe average. but they were getting them pretty easy. It's not like he was providing much resistance. And to your point, Luke, yeah, he reversed Buren, but it's another one of these things where people see that and they go, oh, he got up or he reversed him. That means he's a good defensive grappler. It's like, no, there's fucking levels to grappling. Like, if Frankie Saenz ends up on his back or on top of him out, he's probably not getting reversed. Like, that's just the way it is. Yeah, I mean, my concern here, and the reason I haven't jumped on Saenz yet, and I'm still thinking about it, but Edward Bryan posted it in chat, it's still going up. And with the way these faves have been getting slammed day of recently, I'm wondering if I could maybe get it like in the plus 250 range. That would be awesome. But I just, even in the minute and a half he fought Vera, he didn't look bad. His movement looked fine. Like it really did. He just got clipped coming in. My real hesitation is he's almost 40 and he's at 135, where when skills go, they tend to go all at once. And that is a hesitation. But skill for skill, he's the better fighter. Like if this fight's 2 years ago, or even if he had fought Jonathan Martinez when he fought Vera, Saenz is probably minus 150. And instead now he's minus 250. He's the consensus pick across Twitter and Bet MMA this week.
Yeah.
It's pretty perplexing. I think we've been talking about it all week in the chat. Like, I don't see how can people, and the fact he's minus 250 means people have been hitting him past minus 200. Like, how can you be comfortable laying that truth with him? It's like, sure, for every time, and I kind of wanted to, sorry for the brief rant here, but I kind of wanted on last week with Aspinall Collier when people were like, oh, Tom Aspinall, you saw Collier on the scales, you had to bet him. Same thing with Maurice Green and John Vellante. It's like,
right.
Yeah, those narratives are right sometimes, but then for every time one of those is right, you have 3 or 4 when it doesn't go that way, and the guy who's just more skilled just beats the other guy's ass. Like, that tends to happen.
You touched on it, like the Ortega Holloway.
Yeah, yes. So I mentioned that in chat. Everyone's like, oh, Max doesn't look good, does concussions. Ortega's a fighter on the rise. Then Max dumpstered him. That stuff happens, a fair bit. And so it's I kind of think you have to, if you want to pass this fight because of Saenz' age, I get it. But there's really nothing in the tape that, suggests that Jonathan fucking Martinez should be minus 250 here. But, I mean, if you guys have a strong read on him, I mean, power to you. I would say I hope you hit, but I'm rooting for Luke here, so so I don't. But anyway, we'll move on. We have another little fun one here. Kevin Holland, Trevin Giles. Luke, I think you have another play here, so take it away.
Yeah, I'm gonna preface this by saying that this is probably one of the bigger, I guess, quote unquote, maybe leaps of faith I've taken in a while, especially at a chalky of a price. I played Kevin Holland for 3 units at minus 200 here. Ultimately, my reason being is I just think Kevin Holland is the much better fighter here, and I think Trevin Giles is fade material. I don't really value his skill set very highly. I think he's got decent boxing, decent power. I guess I'd maybe put him in the serviceable category, but I don't think any of these, either of these guys are winning any Nobel Peace Prizes because they're both kind of dumbasses. But I would also argue, I think that Trevin Giles is probably more stupid than Kevin Holland. I from what I've heard in interviews and whatnot, I don't like to take a ton of stock into this, but it just seems like the guy's taking his career a little bit more seriously right now. I think he's the better striker at range. I think he's the better wrestler if he actually wants to take there. And I've actually heard Trevin Giles sit there and say that he's actually potentially looking to wrestle with Kevin Holland too, which I think would be a drastic mistake here, as Kevin Holland has a massive jiu-jitsu advantage. So everything here to me speaks Kevin Holland. I think Kevin Holland wins this fight at a very high clip, assuming he doesn't pull a massive stunt, which I guess is always a possibility. So maybe if that's the case, I come back on here with my tail between my legs. But I'm calling it right here on the pod. I think this is the ascent of Kevin Holland.
Danny, how about you?
So like I touched on with the last fight, this wraps up the apple pie shitters on the card. So I definitely I think this is, like we touched on, I think Holland is the smarter of these two fighters, but these guys aren't exactly the highest of IQ fighters. So I mean, like I said, I like Holland in the matchup. I just can't lay minus 200 on Holland. I mean, sure, he looks like he's been making improvements, but based off of what? His last fight that lasted under a minute. So I'm not going to put a ton of stock into that. I'd rather just watch this fight, and I'm rooting for Kevin Holland and Luke Bet.
Yeah, I hear you. It's
a dumpster fire, I think, personally.
Yeah, it is a dumpster fire. And, like, I've kind of been, like, defending the quote-unquote shield, pun intended, in a group chat. Look, I mean, I get the love of Kevin Holland. Like, the physical attributes are insane. He looked great against Fluffy Hernandez for the 30 seconds that fight lasted. He's had moments of brilliance mixed in with moments of hilarity. But I don't hate Trevin Giles. Like, I think he's a decent fighter. I don't – he's also a moron. I was actually in attendance when he got subbed by GM3. I had him parlayed with Colby, and I also was about 6 beers deep and down a bunch of money, and I may or may not have just loaded up pretty heavy on him straight, like going into the fight, and I basically just melted into my seat when that was over. But I don't know. He's like Giles is a better wrestler, I would say. Like, I think he can probably get to this fight to the mat pretty consistently. Now, what he does on the mat is a different question. Like, I actually do think if Giles, wants to control him, he can. I just don't really trust him to because he's a moron. On the feet, I think, I think Giles is going to have some trouble here. I think his striking might be a little cleaner, but that reach and those kicks of Holland, I think, are going to neutralize that a good bit. But ultimately, it's like, I do think it's a messy fight. I think they both have pretty significant finishing upside in this spot. I think Holland's going to win, but if you told me – if you told me Giles fought smart and wrote him out for 15 minutes, I would say you're crazy because that's just not his MO. But if you told me, like, one of these guys gets a random finish, I wouldn't be shocked. It's a fight I don't really – if Giles crosses the plus 200 threshold, I might get in because I do think he has a very, very – fuck off, Dave. He has a very viable path to victory here. I just don't think it's trustworthy. So anyway, yeah, it's no play for me. We move on. See, you bet Eddie Wineland versus O'Malley too, you dick. We move on. We got Randall Vannata versus Bobby Green. So, Lags, you want to go first here?
Yeah, I guess I said a lot already on the card, but I mean, this could be another fight of the night type of banger. I mean, from what we saw from the first one, but from a betting perspective, I cannot be touching Bobby Green. He plays way too close to in all of his fights, and they're way, way too close, and he's coming to a close decision. So I'm looking to back Lando here, but I mean, not at the current price, like minus 145. So if it comes back down to even money, that would be the look. But I don't know. This is another pass for me, and I wouldn't really recommend a lot of people putting money on this fight.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. So I think Green's the better fighter, personally. I think he's just more complete and kind of better everywhere. But I touched on it last time Green fought, and I said it in our group chat. But it's weird because Bobby Green, like, if you look at his metrics and his stats, he looks like he should be like a legitimate top 10 fighter. And you watch him fight, and he doesn't really ever get blown out of the water. But, what happens to him is, he's so worried about posing and smiling at his opponents. And it's like he's rolling punches, but number one, I don't think judges really know how to read that. And so a lot of times they think he's getting hit. And then it's almost like he's throwing good volume, but it almost seems like he's not throwing volume because it's so laid back. It's just bizarre. It's truly bizarre, but just his optics aren't good. And meanwhile, Lando's kind of like the king of optics. Like, he's probably going to throw like 15 spinning attacks that look like they land, and he maybe will land one of them. And so it's just like, I think Green's better, but I just feel like it's going to be something where I watch it and I'm like, man, Green won, loses a split decision. We look later and see he outlanded Vannata by 50 strikes. Like that, it just like that has that written all over it. So yeah, it's a pass for me. How about you, Luke?
Yeah, this is one also in my 3 not for me this week. I will say though, if like Bobby Green got to like plus 150 or so, that's kind of my bet consideration number because I do think it's a pretty close fight, but it definitely would be a bit of a dart throw. Neither of these guys I particularly am looking to back. You pretty much hit the nail on the head with Green, and then in Vannata, he's just going to come forward throw a lot of flashy stuff. But I guess in terms of optics, it looks good in what he's throwing, but he's also a guy who doesn't wear damage particularly well either. He has a ton of scar tissue and gets busted up in like virtually every one of his fights. But I do think Bobby Green is the better fighter. You know, the first time they fought, Lando definitely got the better of him, hurt him a couple times. Lando would have won that fight if he didn't land the illegal knee. That's essentially what caused the draw. So I get him being favored here. That makes sense. But I guess how often does Lando hurt Bobby? I don't know. I guess if you're thinking it's going to play exactly the same as the first fight, I don't know. I think Bobby might have something for him. I'm picking Bobby, but definitely not running to the window to bet him.
Lex?
I already went over this one.
Oh, my bad.
You're up on this one, John.
Well, you're up anyway. We're going to Luque and Reddy Brown. So what do you got?
Oh, so I guess like we were touching on Twitter earlier today, in the last few fights, Luque has not been the value side, and that's what we're looking at when we're finding bets. We're trying to find perceived value. So we look over the last couple fights. Price was a plus 240 over Luque. Wonder Boy a plus 100 over Luque. Mike Perry in a closest split decision lost that I thought he arguably could have won that at plus 220. And then Barberena, who was on his way to winning a decision at plus 350 until the knockout. So while Luque has been winning these fights, I wouldn't say that backing him on the money line is the value side here. So for me personally, I don't buy the narrative that Luque's chin is deteriorating, yes, but I don't know if Randy Brown is going to be the guy to put him out. So I'm targeting the over 1.5 in this fight at minus 160. So I'm putting one unit on that. And I think that Randy Brown's going to want to stay on the outside and try to stick and move and avoid that type of brawly fight that Luque so try to bring his opponents into. So
yeah, I was like a Luque guy for like the longest time, to be honest with you. And like I largely to an extent still am. Like the tools to be a top 5 fighter are there. They've always been there. You know, his boxing is so clean. He's got great power. He's got good wrestling and a good submission game. But for whatever reason, you know, he's basically stopped grappling altogether, you know, since he gassed out against Edwards. And, you know, if he was ever going to deploy it, you would have thought it would have been against Stephen Thompson or Nico Price. Didn't do it either. So I don't think that's really on the table here. And so it's like to your point, Lags, Luque's basically been in 50-50 fight after 50-50 fight.
Right.
Partially because he's willing to take a shot to give a shot, and partially because his opponents have also been willing to be those guys who will go in there and just trade with him. The one who wasn't was Stephen Thompson. Now, don't get me wrong. Stephen Thompson is levels above Randy Brown as a striker. I'm not going to pretend that that's not the case. But, you know, we saw him, like, I get the feeling when I watch him, you know, Luque, like I said, everything's real clean with him, but he doesn't cut angles super well. And so when he's dealing with guys that are angling off well, he kind of struggles with it. And so, like, Luque, he's kind of slow. I don't think he's the best gas tank. Like, he's slowed down. Like, he never, like, flat out gassed, but he slows down in every fight. And then, like, on the other side, we have Randy Brown, and it's like, I do like Randy Brown, to be honest, just in general. But, you know, I don't think he's, like, an elite talent, but he throws good volume. You know, he generally outpaces his opponents. He's super long. You rarely ever see him engage in the kind of pocket brawls that Luque is used to. And when he does come inside, he generally comes all the way into the clinch. And, you know, he's got a great clinch game. So it's like, and Luque, on the other hand, doesn't. So I kind of think, you know, if Brown fights the way he normally fights, which is basically playing the inside-out game, trying to use his length, or when he comes in, goes all the way in and forces the clinch, you know, he can make this at worst a 50 fight. You know, maybe slight edge to Luque because of the finishing potential in a smaller cage. But I do think, you know, with Brown's height and length advantage, he's going to be able to touch Luque up on the outside pretty much at will. And, I mean, everybody touches him up at will. So it ultimately is like, can Luque force him and drag him into the fight that he wants here? Maybe. And if Brown does go into the pocket and starts exchanging with him, then he's fucked. And it's like, my bet is going to be fucked. But I'm willing to take the chance that, you know, I do like how Brown strikes on the move, that if he can stay on his bike, that, you know, it can frustrate Luque and he can just kind of outpoint him here. So, yeah, I view it as like a slight edge to Luque. I have a small play on Brown. I played him for 1.5 plus 160. But, yeah, I think it's almost a coin flip. Luke, how about you?
So similar to Lags, no side here for me, but I think I play the over 1.5 at minus 160 as well. I think it has a tremendous amount of value. I think both guys over the course of their careers, that over in 1.5 hits, I think it's 74% of the time. So like minus 285 on the money line. So I think just based on statistics, you're getting a decent number there. But in terms of the bet stylistically, I guess you kind of touched on it, John. I think it's fair to assume that Randy's going to look to play the avoid and outside game. I don't think he's going to want to sit here and get into these pocket brawls with Luque, and he's probably going to want to avoid the grappling at all costs. It is in the smaller cage, so I definitely get that. I do think there is finish potential here, but I don't necessarily see it early. I maybe see it late if, like you said, maybe Luque starts to slow down, Randy kind of clips him with something, or Luque's eventually kind of able to figure out that range. I just think that first 5 minutes is going to be kind of like a feeling out type process, and then the fight kind of takes off. So that kind of gives me like 2.5 minutes of like potential sweat. But I really think that first minute or so, it's going to be kind of, that Randy stick and move type game. And so, I think that with the odds maker setting it at 1.5, it just is like a massive mistake. I get both guys have like had a ton of finishes. They've been, or I should say Brown's been finished a couple times. Like I get it, but like based on the stylistics of the fight, to me, the 1.5 just seems a little crazy to me. So I played it for 2 units at minus 160.
It is kind of weird, to be honest. Like Brown, the only time I think he's been finished by strikes, correct me if I'm wrong, was the Price fight. And that was just kind of bizarre. Like he's never really shown an issue taking punches. And I do largely think the Luque chin narrative is a bit overrated. Don't get me wrong, it could happen. But like I rewatched the Thompson fight before I placed the bet on Brown, and he did get dropped, but he ate a million shots that fight and was still coming forward. Same thing with Price. And it's like, I do expect it's going to go at some point, but is it going to go tomorrow? I'm not so sure about that. And then on the other side, C mentioned, in the comments, the leg kicks. And those are a pretty big concern with Randy Brown, except, he's done it to Nico Price. And he did it to Thompson too. Like he doesn't really seem to have those kind of really punishing kicks that are crippling. Now I'm going to say this and he's going to kick Brown's leg off his body. We have like a decent sample of guys who are front foot heavy, of him hitting them and then being able to continue to fight through it. It's an exciting fight, one way or another. I'm really excited for it. Next up, we have, oh God, I can't believe we have to talk about this. Joanne Calderwood versus Jennifer Maia. Lags, I think do you have a play here? You were talking.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have 1 unit on Joanne Calderwood by decision at plus 110. So I'm kind of, I guess, shocked as everybody else is to see the line moving as it is, as JoJo opened near a minus 185, minus 190 favorite and dropping back down to minus 150. And I just think that Calderwood basically is going to be able to neutralize anything that Maia's going to be able to do here. I think she's going to have more output on the feet. It's going to be more diverse attacks. And I think the only way that Joanne makes this like a closer fight is if she gets taken down, which we haven't really seen from Maia's game plan. And she averages 0.25 takedowns per 15 minutes. So I guess I would say that in her career, Calderwood's only been taken down by the profuse wrestlers, KGB Lee, Cynthia Calvillo, and Andrade. So I don't know. It's tough for me to see Maia outpointing her to a decision or out wrestling her to a decision. So for me, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. And if the line keeps going down, I'm going to put a money line straight bet on her.
Yeah, good. I don't hate that, Lags. I haven't played it myself because it's just pretty much the kind of play that got me into a ton of trouble last year. Basically playing favorites in women's fights. I just don't read them very well. I do generally agree with what you're saying, though. I think Calderwood's more technical. I think she's going to probably be a better output. She has wrestling side, whereas Maia really doesn't. Or wrestling upside, I should say. It's just, I hate these kind of fights because it's just like, neither has any finishing potential here. And it's like all it really takes is a flurry here or there, or a flurry at the end of the round to steal it. And so it's a no play for me. Although I will say this, if it moves down to like being evens, I'll probably jump in on JoJo. But I just can't read these shit women's fights for anything. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so it's kind of similar to Lags. I haven't made a play here yet. But yeah, that Joanne by decision opened like plus 170 and just got
170.
steamed down, which
Yep.
is fair because that's a pretty crazy line, to be honest. I'm staying away from method of victory props because they've just freaking killed me this year. But no, I guess similar to Lags, I like Calderwood in this spot. I think minus 130 is my consideration number. If that Maia money keeps coming in, I'll probably be playing JoJo for like 2 units at minus 130. Largely, my reasoning being is that I think the leg kicks in the teep is going to be there all day to keep Maia off of her, where she kind of relies on just that pocket boxing type style, where JoJo still will play the outside, but she throws in high volume and can mix it up in the pocket too. Like she'll get hit there, but she's never really been hurt too much. I actually really do like Jennifer Maia, though. I think she's slightly underrated. Like, I don't think she's winning any world titles or anything, but I think she's a girl who's going to be in the UFC for quite a few years, just given her style. She high output, got a little pop at the end of her punches. I think she's going to be in the UFC for quite a few years, but I just don't think JoJo's a good style matchup for her, especially if she does go to the grappling too. I believe Maia is a black belt, but no one's really put her on her back. So I'm kind of curious to see. I think JoJo could also be competitive there too. So everything to me speaks Calderwood, but to your point, John, it's not exactly a fight that I'm clamoring to play. But if that correct price does present itself, minus 130 is my consideration number. I'll consider playing it.
Yeah, I hear you. And honestly, the other thing is, Lags, I mentioned it to you earlier in the week, but like, fucking JoJo has been my absolute poison. I had Andrea Lee against her. I had Lipsky against her. I played her against Chikagian. It's just been nightmarish wagering money on JoJo Calderwood fights for me.
I guess the last thing I'll add too, as I noticed over on Maia's Instagram, she really hasn't been training with any other fighters. She's mostly been training at her house outside, whereas JoJo's been training with Roxanne Modafferi, a former opponent of Maia, and Emily Whitmire. So she's at least getting good looks in the gym.
That's a fair point. I mean, I think she's more skilled. I definitely think she's more skilled. It's
and
like,
I think, sorry to interrupt again real quick, but I guess it's tough for me to also see, like, I'm playing narrative here, but JoJo accepting this fight and she has a title shot in line. So I feel like stylistically, she thinks she has an advantage in this fight. So that's why she's taking it on short notice. So I don't know. Everything points to JoJo for me, but I wouldn't be surprised if it just blew up in my face.
Yeah, that's how these tend to go. But I'm rooting for you, Legs. I like JoJo. So. All right, here we go. Main event of the evening. I think I'm going to piss some people off here.
Probably will.
Edmund Shahbazyan against Derek Brunson. Pretty much. So, I mean, we've all talked about it a lot. It's been pretty heavy topic of conversation on Twitter this week. My thoughts pretty much are it's definitely possible Edmund Shahbazyan is the next great thing and is a future champion. Wouldn't shock me at all. He's looked fantastic. Like, there's no question about it. But that said, he has 18 minutes of time in the octagon. In those 3 fights to date, his first fight, he fought Darren Stewart. Now, he wrestled him to death, and his offensive wrestling, in fairness to him, looked pretty damn good. But he completely gassed out in round 3 of that fight. And frankly, if it's a better fighter than Darren Stewart, he probably gets finished. That was a bit of a concern. Second fight, Charles Berg, who is a complete, whatever.
Who just retired.
Yeah, finishes him in 38 seconds, complete jobber. Next fight, Jack Marshman, takes him down immediately, subs him. Then Brad Tavares. And now he looked great against Tavares. Don't get me wrong. He went out there and knocked him out. But let's be real. Tavares has been looking poor for a while. He barely fights anymore. He's had a consistent amount of injuries. And so I'm not trying to take anything away from it. My point is really more we haven't really been able – the one time we've seen Edmund over 15 minutes, the end of it was pretty ugly. Now, I don't think – if he doesn't attempt 14 takedowns, I don't expect he'll gas out like that. Don't get me wrong. But we just haven't seen him put together a complete fight. We haven't even really seen him have any kind of extended striking exchanges. When we have, towards the end of the Stewart fight, Stewart was hitting him pretty clean at the end of that fight, even on the feet. And we've never seen him defend takedowns, really. We haven't really seen him off his back against a decent wrestler. And so I just think there's a ton of uncertainty behind Edmund Shahbazyan. Like, he looks great. He's 23. But I think it's kind of crazy. And on the other side, you have Derek Brunson, who is, a bit of a wild man. The guy is pretty much, he's a true top 5 to 8 gatekeeper. That's what he is. Brunson's got, good. He's a strong wrestler. He's got elite power. And recently he's been a little less of a wild man and has leaned on the wrestling a lot more. And so it's like, could Edmund beat him? Yes, 100%. Like, I'd even probably favor Edmund, but it would be a low confidence interval. The thing is, would anybody really be surprised if Brunson comes out here and takes him down 4 or 5 times and grinds him out? I wouldn't. I mean, he took down Yoel Romero 4 times. You're telling me he can't take down Edmund Shahbazyan? I think he probably can. Now, whether he can control him, I don't know. But again, we haven't seen Edmund on his back. So it's, again, massive unknown. In the boxing, as long as he doesn't go sprinting at him, I expect Edmund to get ahead on points. But would anybody really be surprised? Edmund has that kind of weird, keeps his head on the center line. If Brunson just nukes him, would anybody be shocked at that? Like, I don't think it should be a shock to anybody, but he's getting lined right now. Edmund's minus 330 right now. I mean, what is that? About 76%, 76.5% implied probability here. He may be worth that. Don't get me wrong. He may come out here and prove that he is worth that. But I've seen nothing in the tape to say he should be valued that much higher than Brunson at this point. Now, if he comes out here and puts it on for 15 minutes, I'll be happy. I mean, I won't be happy I lost my money, but I'll be I'll be happy that we at least got a full performance from him and we know what he is. But against a guy like Brunson, who is a quality opponent, who can crack, who can wrestle, I think capping him higher than 60% with all of these question marks is a little on the crazy side, to be honest. So I put a unit on Brunson plus 250. Like I said, confidence interval is pretty low. It wouldn't shock me if Edmund comes out and more than justifies the price. Also wouldn't shock me if Brunson comes out and puts him to sleep or wrestle fucks him. None of those scenarios shock me. So, I mean, it is kind of a dart throw, but it's a dart throw, and I'm willing to pay to find out what Edmund is. Luke, how about you?
Honestly, this is one of the times I'm going to be silent and shut up because you literally said you hit every single point I was going to touch on. I literally don't have anything else to say. The guys, like you said, there's too many question marks. The guy's improvement. You're going to give me plus 270 or whatever on a guy who's been proven, fought the better guys, who does have some stylistic considerations that can pose problems to the 22-year-old kid who hasn't really proven me anything, at least over the course of 15 minutes. When he didn't look very good against a guy who's not the caliber of Derek Brunson or the wrestler. So I won't get started on it because, like I said, you hit it, John. This is similar to the Herman fight. I will be playing Brunson. I haven't played him yet. I think we're going to get a massive late surge on Edmund, and I honestly think I can get Brunson at plus 300. So I'm going to wait this one out. I'm going to play a little bit of hardball, but like you said, man, it may be a dart throw, but because there's so many question marks on a guy where his price tag is that high, it's one of those times it's a bet I'm willing to lose because I'm willing to find out. Because even like you said, even if Edmund comes out there and sparks him, it's I guess it justifies the line, but then again, we still haven't had any questions answered on him, so it's I'm kind of willing to throw a unit on that to just find out. So I guess we'll see, but I will be betting it.
Honestly, I just want a 15-minute performance out of Edmund. That's what I want. I want a 15-minute performance.
One unit for 15 minutes out of Edmund. We'll just take the L. Just 15 minutes.
What money? That's Lag, what do you got for me here?
So I'm playing contrarian here. I'm on the public here. I'm on Edmund, to be honest. So I like you guys touched on, I don't think that the money line price is currently justified, and that's why I'm not playing that straight or looking to even parlay that. But I'm looking to play Edmund's win conditions from what we've seen in his previous fight. So I have a half unit on Edmund round 1 knockout at plus 240, and I have 1 unit on Edmund wins in round 1 or round 2 at minus 115. So from what I've seen on tape, to be honest, I guess counter with you guys' points, we've either seen a very timid Brunson who stays on the outside against Silva, Izzy, and Jacare, or we've seen a very rushed opponent or rushed Derek Brunson in the Whitaker fights and the Hall fights. Now in the Hall fight, he was able to clip Hall, and I know he was arguing the stoppage. I don't think that was an early stoppage at all. And in the Whitaker fight, he was just sloppily going after takedowns. after him over and over and over again. And I think, honestly, Edmund's going to be one of the fastest guys that he's faced on the feet. I know that might be a hot take, but I think he's definitely very agile, and that he's just going to – I don't know if he's going to be able to avoid the I think, like you guys touched on, if he gets taken down, I don't know if he's going to be able to hold him down. So I honestly think that he does spark Brunson in the first round, just because of what we've seen lately, that either he's either that full all-in guy or he's that all-out guy. So if he's that all-out guy, I think Edmund's just going to be able to put it on him. But
yeah, I mean, I agree. And like,
but I'm not, like I said, I'm not rushing to parlay that money line. I don't think that is justified. And
I sort of think you'll know in 2 minutes how
right.
Not who will win, but how it's going to go. Because if Brunson comes out like Berserker Brunson, who's going to sprint at him, Edmund's going to put him on contract almost immediately. But I do think it's going to be interesting. And if it's not, if Edmund comes out there, gets taken down, bounces up, and just beats his ass, well, then we learned a lot about Edmund.
Right.
But like, the big difference is I've seen some comps to like Adesanya this week. And the big difference is Adesanya, first of all, I think he had 12 fights before he went to the UFC. But he also had like a 35-fight kickboxing career where he was an elite kickboxer. Like, this is not – Adesanya was a seasoned fighter who was 29 years old. I'm impressed with Edmund. I like him. But he's 23. He still has a lot of maturing to go. And maybe he's there, and maybe he is the future of the UFC. Would be pretty cool if so. But, yeah, I'm willing to pay the price to see it. Anyway, guys, you guys got anything else you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I don't think I got any no Lambo parlays this week. It's definitely been it's definitely not a great card for that, to be honest with you.
I'll throw one thing out real quick. If we do get Invicta lines, give me Aaron Blanchfield under -200. I'll be playing that. Really?
All right. And then I haven't figured out. It depends when they drop odds for Contender Series. I'm going to try to drag Sion with me. We'll see if I can get him on or not.
You could probably get a Warrior on too if he's interested in doing it. Contender Series, things like that.
Whether they drop odds or not, like they sometimes drop on Tuesday, sometimes Monday. But I'll probably do a Monday night show on it, just brief, go through each fight. When I think of it, a lot of messy fights in week one. But yeah, we're trying to get as much stuff out there as possible. But yeah, other than that, we'll be back next Wednesday. Depends on Quinn's work schedule, but it'll either be at 9 or 10:30. Hopefully one of these days we can get Quinn to take a different job so we can do them all. At 9 p.m. But yeah, it'll be fun. Next week we got Olenek versus Derek Lewis. It's another weird card, but
shit show of a 5-round fight. That's unbelievable, honestly. Like I would rather have this fight be 5 rounds.
But yeah, we do not have Lambos this week. But yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll have some fun with it. There's a lot of dogs next week that I think are interesting. I think Scott Holtzman right now is still pretty intriguing at +135. But anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. We should have both Quinn and C back with us next week. Also, if you enjoy Magic's commentary in the comment section, go hit him up on Twitter and try to drag him onto the pod at some point in the next month as a special guest. We'd love to have him on here. But yeah,
how about this? If Edmund sparks Brunson within 30 seconds, Magic, you come on the next pod.
Yeah,
fair.
I think that's a fair deal. We're gonna take a silence as a yes. But anyway, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed. As usual, I'm your host John Stargarian. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox, at Luke at SWR_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. And we'll have Quinn and C back with us next week. But thanks a lot, guys, and enjoy the fights this weekend. Take it easy.